Hi, this is our project, Tiny Garden. I'm Vivian.
I'm Maggie.
And I'm Sophia.
So our project is showing you how to grow your own food using only water and not taking up too much space. There are several benefits to what we did, and the main one is that you can save money. You can grow these plants from scraps so that once you use a food or use most of the food, you can just replant it, and then eventually you will have some of that food to use later on without having to buy it. This works especially well if you just cook for yourself and not a lot of other people, because then you can just use what you need from your plant in small amounts instead of buying more than what you will use and having it go to waste. You also don't need to buy any additional supplies other than the food. You don't need soil, you just use water, or you don't even need pots because you can just use glasses, jars, or even takeout containers. And additionally, this project can be done by anybody who wants to do it. You don't need a house, yard, garden, or even a balcony. So even if you're living in a small apartment or a college dorm, you could do this on just your windowsill. And it's very easy. You don't need to have a green thumb or any gardening knowledge. It just takes very little time and effort. Just the simple steps of putting the food in water and then changing the water every few days or so. And finally, this project is very sustainable. It reduces food waste both by regrowing your scraps and then not needing to overbuy food in the future. So imagine you wanted to make a margarita pizza or a baked potato or something like that. You don't have to go to the store and buy a big batch of basil or green onions, which come in lots of plastic often and used a lot of carbon to be transported to the store, and you might not end up using all of it anyway. You might throw some away. But instead, with this project, you can keep your plant on hand, and whenever you feel like adding something extra to your meal, it is there for you for free and for very little effort. A popular example of something that was kind of similar to our project is window boxes in Philadelphia, although these are outside and they have soil and mainly flowers, unlike our project. And these were used as a form of social reform in the 19th and 20th centuries. They were given as charity to poor and sick people, especially immigrants and Black Americans. And later on, they were used in activism against urban decay and to improve neighborhoods. It also led to greater awareness about unequal access to green spaces. However, it should be noted that window boxes can contribute to gentrification and displace people with lower incomes. Additionally, these gardens can have a high cost in time and money for installation and maintenance, so for our project we wanted to do it in a way that was more accessible so that more people could take part in it. And this example of window gardening shows how projects like these can lead to greater social change, especially when more people practice them. So these are all the plants that we chose to grow. There are more that you can do, but we chose these ones because all of them only required water to grow, so you can, but you don't have to transplant any of them into soil. And this allows anyone to have a tiny garden, even if you lack space or gardening skill or money, or even if you're just lazy, you're able to grow all of these plants pretty easily. All we had to do was take the leftover pieces we didn't use while cooking and put them into a jar or a bowl of water, and then just leave on the windowsill or anywhere with sun for a while, replace the water every few days or so, and it takes very little energy and effort. And for bok choy, lettuce, and cabbage, you can make a little salad or something without having to go out and buy an entire head of the ingredient, which might be a little discouraging if you don't want to buy that much, so this will help you have more nutrients. And then for celery, we thought that could be a good snack for a lot of things. You can dip it in ranch. And for the carrot tops specifically, we wanted to try to make pesto using it, homemade. And then we had a lot of herbs that you could use for garnish. And so with these plants, you don't have to go to the store and buy a lot that might go to waste. You can just have some whenever you're ready for it. So these are the costs that we had, and as you can see, the project is not very expensive because all you need to buy is the food you're going to grow, and you're probably already buying the food anyway to use it in cooking, and you don't need to get anything else. This project would also be even cheaper if you buy food seasonally, so these prices listed are what we had in spring, but if you regrow food that is in season, you could save even more money.
So for how to grow and maintain your plant, I'm going to just give a detailed tutorial for bok choy specifically first, just because it has a very similar process that can be applied to other plants. So basically, to get started, all you have to do is cut off the base of the bok choy, leaving around like 1 to 2 inches. And then you can use the rest of the bok choy to cook something else. You're going to want to take that base and just place them in any container of water, and then fill the water about like halfway up so the top of the bok choy is still exposed in the air. You're also going to want to make sure to change the water like every 1 to 2 days. Sometimes the bok choy, like the outside leaves, are going to turn a little brown, so all you have to do is remove those pieces. And then we noticed bok choy grows pretty fast, so after about a week or so, it'll be really leafy, and you're just gonna want to let it keep growing until it's at a size that you think it's good enough to eat. You can also do this same procedure of like cutting the base off and putting it in water and changing the water frequently with vegetables like celery, lettuce, cabbage, green onion, and carrot tops. And then for herbs, like cilantro, mint, and basil, all you have to do is just take a few leaves off of like the bottom area of the plant that's going in the water, and then just place it in the water. And then there's going to be pictures on the next slide. So here are pictures of how all of our plants first started, so if you ever like need a reference picture for how it should look. In the top row, starting from the left, we have celery, bok choy, cilantro, mint, and basil. And then in the bottom row, there are carrot tops, lettuce, green onions, and cabbage. You can see in most of them, the tops are like kind of chopped off, and then they're all in like some kind of container of water, so super easy to get started with. So this is our progression of growth. On this slide, these are Sophia's plants. So she did carrot tops, lettuce, and green onions. In the top row, we can see how they did 1 week after they were put in water, and they're all doing kind of okay. You can definitely see the most growth in the green onions. And then after 3 weeks, there's definitely some more growth. So in the carrot tops, you can see the leaves are growing a lot. The lettuce, there's some growth, but definitely not as much as other plants. And then the green onions, they're doing really well. They're really growing. So here are my plants. I did celery, bok choy, and cilantro. You can see after 1 week, there's definitely some growth in the celery leaves, also in the bok choy, and the cilantro looks fine as well. Around 3 weeks later, the celery is much leafier. The bok choy also looks great, and it honestly looks ready to eat. The cilantro, though, it looks a little bit rough. I'm thinking maybe it being in the sun all the time didn't work so well, although the leaves definitely did get bigger by it being in the water. And then finally, these are Vivian's plants. So she had mint, basil, and cabbage. In the first week, she wasn't seeing much growth for any of the plants. But after 3 weeks, like the basil started growing a lot of roots, and it also looked like the leaves were getting bigger. The cabbage also started growing green leaves out of it, which we all thought was pretty interesting because it is a red cabbage. But yeah, overall, we all saw growth in our plants. It was just really noticeable for some of the plants, especially like green onion and bok choy and cabbage.
Yeah, so here are some ways to easily incorporate the foods that we've grown into easy snacks or meals. This is really nice for on-the-go food, especially for college students. So first off, similar to what Professor Gloucester did with putting peanuts in her ramen for extra nutrients and protein, you could also put your grown bok choy and green onions into ramen for some extra nutrients and flavor. You can also make an easy salad using cabbage, lettuce, and basil that you grow. And you can also use the grown celery as a snack, dipping it in ranch, or also doing ants on a log, which is where you put peanut butter and raisins onto celery. With the herbs we grew, like mint or basil, you can add them to pastas for extra flavor. And with the green onions I grew, I cut them up and added them to rice with some chili oil and tempeh and made a really easy meal. So that was really cool to be able to use the plants that I grew. So some simple recipes that we've made using the plants that we grew. These are just 2 of them. There is a simple noodle soup with bok choy and tofu. It seems like it has a lot of ingredients, but it is pretty simple and can be customized easily to include other veggies or protein that you have available to kind of clear out the fridge, make sure nothing goes bad. And this noodle soup recipe uses bok choy and green onions, which you can grow easily in water. And then the second recipe is carrot top and basil pesto, which uses the basil and carrot tops we grew. The only thing with this recipe is that it does require a blender or food processor, so it might be a little bit more difficult to make in a dorm, but especially like in an apartment or house, it's a lot easier. And you kind of just throw everything in the blender and then kind of add different ingredients to taste. So pretty simple. And yeah, the food we grew can be used in many different recipes. These are just a few that I wanted to highlight. So now thinking about the plants we grew and some things that went well for us and some things that we think could be improved. For the plants that I grew the green onions, carrot tops, and lettuce. So the green onions grew really well. I was able to use them within the first week, just kind of cutting off the tops of them, and they kept regrowing. And the carrot tops were also really easy to grow. Something that could have been improved was my lettuce. I didn't see a lot of growth over the course of the project. Could have been something to do with the way that I cut it, or there was some other issue that didn't allow it to have a lot of growth. Because when doing research for this project, lettuce was definitely something that I saw that you could do pretty easily. So I think it must have went wrong. So hopefully I can try that again and get better results. In addition, the carrot tops took a while to grow, and you don't get a lot of carrot tops like per carrot, and I only did 3. So I think next time I would have done a few more carrots just to get a little bit more plants grown from that. But it was still really easy and grew pretty well. Vivian had cabbage, which grew really well, and it was very low effort. She also saw roots grow, which is really cool and means that she could like transplant it into soil relatively easily. Something that didn't go as well was Vivian's basil. It took a while to recover from like initially wilting. She saw that the herbs she was trying to grow didn't grow very much, but they were able to stay fresh longer than if they were just in the fridge or out. So that's something cool that we learned is that can, even if you don't see a lot of growth, it can still help with a lot of keeping fresh and not having your herbs go bad as quick. Maggie's bok choy also had a lot of growth and was very easy to maintain. Sadly, her cilantro died, however. So again, the herbs were just a little bit trickier. But overall, we felt we were really successful. And especially like some plants like cabbage, the green onions, and the bok choy saw a lot of growth. And definitely we are planning to keep using this so that we can have these plants on hand. And like I said before, the herbs had a harder time. Still, this was a really fun project and was really easy because we were just growing it in water, so the only maintenance was changing out the water. And I will definitely keep some of these plants like green onions because of how easy it was. I can save money and don't have to buy green onions from the store every time I need it. So overall, this is a really fun project, and we hope you enjoy. Bye!